Why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026. Happy Friday, Grand Rising. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Senior Cage. Mr. Cage coming to you live. Mr. Cage, the trainer. Let's get it this morning. Let's get it this morning, y'all. It's up big. You always hear me say that these conversations that we have are extremely important. And this is a very important uh, Friday morning conversation, considering us being on summer break and considering the state of our cities, our states, our country, our economy. It's going to be a very heavy conversation. The conversation may not feel heavy, but I guarantee you it is extremely heavy. It's extremely important. As you already know, I never jump on a Facebook Live to talk. I always jump on a Facebook Live to build. The difference between talking and building is the origin of the words. Where are these words coming from? What's the motivation connected to or associated with the words? And who do these words really come from? At times we get distracted by the messenger and we miss the message. Mr. Cage's thought of the day. Do not be distracted from the messenger because your focus, or from the message because your focus is on the messenger. Do not be distracted by the messenger. Focus on the message and the origin of the message. That's a hint. That's a hint. That's a hint for us to ponder. I'm checking the stream. Let's put this in. What do I want to do? What I want to do is I want to put. Oh, that was terrible. What just happened? I want to put the new school to prison pipeline link in this comment section real fast, just so those who may be interested in bringing us out to introduce this topic, they'll have access to do so. I want to change this title. I want to put the title up so that I can see it as I share. And the title is Why. I'm going to type as fast as I can, y'all. Why the new school to pipeline is important in 2026. Why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026. We're about to get to it. That's our title. That's our title for today. We'll probably do maybe 45 minutes. It all depends on how the interaction goes. If I see people interacting, then we may go a little bit longer. But if not, we're gonna rock out. Let me get some keywords. Let me give some keywords before we start this journey. Keywords are Ford City, Teen Takeover, warehousing, warehousing logistics, manufacturing, black and brown, air pollution, air quality, Will County, and Cook County. Keywords, listen for these keywords: Ford City, Teen Takeover, warehouses, black and brown, air pollution, air quality, Will, and Cook County. Why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026. The first question we have to ask ourselves is this: what is what is the new school to prison pipeline? What is this, Cage? What are you talking about? And that's the first question we're going to have to ask ourselves before we start on this journey. My computer is being slow. That's why I stopped. That's why I stopped, y'all. Okay, I'm just giving it a moment. Here we go. Why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026. It's important to understand this concept in the year 2026 and beyond. Misunderstanding and a lack of awareness to this idea, concept, and topic will result in generational bondage. It will result in generational bondage. My pastor has shared this with us, and I'll share this with you. It takes a free man to free a man. It takes a free man, man, context, human. It takes a free person. It takes a free man to free a man. It takes a free man to free a man. There are those of us who are in prison and don't know it. There are those of us who are in prison and have yet to come to the reality, to the realization, and to the awareness that we are in prison. Because when we look around us and we do a external evaluation of our present moment, we don't see prison bars. We don't see literal prison bars. But the lives that we live are literally restricted. There are things, activities, exercises, ideas, projects that we believe we cannot do. And at times, we justify our self-imposed restriction and limitation. The question is why? I would tell you it's much deeper than what I'm going to discuss this morning. It's much deeper. What I'm going to discuss with you is very practical. It's on the natural surface. We all can see this. Well, I can't say that we all can see it, but it's easily accessible if you listen. But it's much, much deeper because I can only go so deep, but it's much, much deeper than we realize. The question that I was posing to us is, what is this new school to prison pipeline? The school to prison pipeline was officially named in 2003. Check your resources, do your research, because what we experience is people making statements, specifically online, and the people are not given historical reference to some of the claims they are making. And because we, people in general, like to be entertained, we don't understand that we are being edutained. We are being entertained and educated at the same time. And the most effective and the most dangerous form of education comes through the channel of entertainment. Because we're in a relaxed state, we have the fun. We don't necessarily, our spidey senses is not attuned, which results in us lacking the checks and balances that we need to validate what's being said. Because if we don't and we accept it as true, then could our lives could transform into a perpetual state of imprisonment, and we never step foot in a literal county or correctional facility. But our lives are riddled and saturated with self-imposed ideologies. The school to prison pipeline was named in 2003. Check your resources. That's when it was given its official name, but it was not born in 2003. The school to prison pipeline. This is the first concept that we're aware of. School to prison pipeline was named in 2003 officially, but it was not born in 2003. So from colonial schools to the Committee of 10 in 1892. So as you do your research, look up Committee of 10, 1892. Education systems helped shape unequal pathways. So as you do your research, look up School to Prison Pipeline, year 2003. Then what you want to do is look up 1892, the Committee of 10. 1600, you have colonial roots, which resulted in control and conform. Systems evolve and inequality persists. 1892, structured schooling, sorting, and standardizing came into an existence. Then 2003, the school to prison pipeline was officially named, and the pipeline continues. What I've given you is a brief historical evolution from 1600s to 1892 to 2003. Many events, of course, and many sequences were skipped. But the reason why I gave you that is for you to do your own research and to stop subjecting yourself to what you're seeing and hearing on the internet from a social media standpoint. Social media serves the primary purpose to entertain. And as I said before, many people are being educated while they're being entertained because we don't understand the concept and the terminology associated with edutainment. You can be educated and entertained at the same time, and that seed will find ground in you because it's not in the form of a literal educational institution. And I'll tell you this, and this is for my parents that's dealing in this summer, and the summer results in a lot of regression from the academic standpoint. The reason why is because anything, in most cases, and I'm saying this safely, and this is from my own personal growth and development and professional growth and development observation, teaching, training, facilitating, and educating. Because over the years, I've taught, trained, and facilitated over 10,000 kids from kindergarten through 12th grade. So I'm giving you this from lived out experience, education, and growth and development. In most cases, school takes the fun out of learning. It turns into a mundane process. And that's how the cycle begins, and it is positively reinforced by various and similar experiences that our children have. By the time they're 18, because of the devaluation of education through the institution and the routine of school. And the institutional standpoint, by the time they get 18, I'm done. I'm done with school. You can be done with school, but you will never be done with learning. A person, male or female, whatever age they are, that person can be done with school, but they will never be done with learning. If this be the case, this case study and case scenario, that a child from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade would be, or the fun and the enjoyment out of the school experience is zapped out. It's many factors that influence that. And one of the major factors, and I'm going to touch on this now, one of the major factors is the family environment. We're just going to say family environment for the time being. So my keyword as I transition into this part of the conversation, why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026 is because the city of Chicago is having problems with the teens in their city. If you're not aware of it, tap in, do your research. You can go to YouTube, type in Chicago, type in teen takeover. The question is, why is this city? This is a profound segment of our conversation. Why is the new school to prison pipeline important in 2026? The other question we have to ask ourselves is, why is this specific city having problems with a teen takeover? Teens are getting together, going downtown Chicago, going to various places, I'm sure, in the city of Chicago, and wreaking havoc. Why is this a problem? How can we solve this problem? Recently, the city of Chicago had a forum and they heard from the teens. What is it that y'all need? What is it that y'all want to stop and minimize the violence that's transpiring from these teen takeovers? That's a good strategy. And this is a business point, and this is connected to education as well. Excuse me. Listen to my words, please. In order to properly educate a person or a group of people, you have to survey them first. Because when you survey them and they respond, you get what they value. You get what's important to them. And when you get what's important to a person and you're able to accommodate what's important to a person or a group of people, you can meet the need, the want, and the expectation. And then the end result is, you care about me. I'm going to think twice about making this decision because you have taken the time to ask me, what is it that I need and what is it that I want? Shout out to the city of Chicago for asking the kids and the young people, young teenagers, adolescents, what is it that y'all want and what is it that y'all need? We want to give y'all a platform. We want to give y'all a voice. And in that, preferably, if they can take that data, that intel, that information, and parlay it and tailor it into programs that's for them, you can minimize it, guarantee it. But to solve it, you have to look at the family structure. You have to look at the family structure. And the family structure cannot be governed by legislative moves. Why? Because to reform a people, you have to reform people from the inside out. If you go outside in, these are rules, these are regulations, these are laws that's going to produce behavior modification because the people are going to respond based on the consequences that they know are set in place. And sometimes, and I will say this, consequences alone doesn't change anybody. in order to really change a person from a transformative way, in a transformative fashion, the mindset has to be renewed. Because when your mindset is renewed and your mind is renewed, your perceptions, your behavior becomes different because you see yourself in a different light. Teen takeover. Watching this video and you in the city of Chicago, share this video, this clip with the people. Reinforce to them that if and I'm gonna leave this alone. If you listen to the young people, which is an admirable move, without addressing, and we know this, without addressing the core element of the family foundation, eventually the behavior is going to reproduce itself. So hopefully we hitting it in one area with the teens, and then we talking with the parents. Most of these kids are Black. Most of these kids that are perpetuating this violence, and some of them I'm sure see it as fun, and it transitions into violent acts. Most of these kids are Black, and we can talk about the media messages being sent, but I won't focus on that. But the point that I want to connect is because we only place value, I'm saying from a societal standpoint, we only place value on education for 9 months. And the next 2 months, June and July, we're idle. We don't have anything to do because we've relegated, we've limited the educational experience to being in the institution. Think about this. If you remove the walls and the boundaries internally associated with institutionalized education, those kids will have something to do because they'll have a passion. They'll have educational components as far as life skills, as far as career development, and they'll have academic components in association with math, English, social studies, et cetera, that they find interest in. And when you find interest in something, it takes away your time because you focus on what you're interested in. But if your mind is idle, it's exposed to elements that will find something to do. And in most cases, those findings and the activities that result from those findings are not constructive, are not constructive. Giving you a lot today. Giving you a lot today is extremely important. Extremely important. So what I want you to do is I want you to, I'm checking the feed to see. I'm checking the feed to see where we are. And can I share with you the sad part of a conversation such as this, because it's very weighty. But most people won't pay attention to this type of conversation because they've been schooled. Clock that T. Most people will not pay attention to this type of conversation because they've been schooled, because they've been institutionalized. And when you become institutionalized in association with any culture, you can't see past what you've been institutionalized with. You can't see past your educational experience in association with an institution in connection to a specific culture. You're only going to be able to see in the realm of that culture. For some of us, and this is not me being doom and gloom, this is me being very real and very blunt, forceful, and assertive, it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late. And we're going to have to work our way through the prison system, incarceration of the mind. And that work, it's not done overnight. It's not done overnight. This is the new school to prison pipeline. So we've already highlighted the Cook County, Chicago, and the teen takeover. We've already discussed that. The new school to prison pipeline. Here we go. If you're watching this, type ready. I'm about to give you this. This is very, very important. We discussed the O. We discussed the O, which I told you that the official name of the school to prison pipeline came in 2003 historically. Do your research. Let me know if it's accurate or not. But one of the key components is the Committee of 10 in 1892. I want you to look up that. The new school to prison pipeline coming from Mr. Cage, the trainer, representing potential. Teach kids to think before they do. The new school to prison pipeline, it results in a literal incarceration and structural exclusion. The new school to prison pipeline in 2026 that I'm introducing to you and beyond results in both a literal incarceration and structural exclusion. It can produce a person transitioning into prison, jail, or the county jail, because that's what my experience was. Equally important, it results in structural exclusion because it's born from a mindset. It was born from a mindset, keyword, mindset that became a system. So mindsets translate into systems. Mindsets always translates into system. I'll put up a question on my Facebook page, and the question was, and I'm reading it from the other screen, am I a product of my environment or am I a product of someone else's thinking? You're a product of someone else's thinking for me to answer that question. Because without thinking, without the mindset, you can't produce environment physically. Because there's an internal environment and an external environment that we see outside of us manifests from an internal environment which is within us, which is the mindset. So without a mindset, without thinking, you can't produce an external environment because that external environment has to come from a blueprint. You can make an equivalent to a house. Any house that's built, any apartment complex, any structure, any brick and mortar structure first had to have first had the first phase is an idea. The next phase is I'm gonna take this idea and I'm gonna transition it into a blueprint. Then you gather all the resources, et cetera, to produce that physical structure. The new school to prison pipeline results in literal incarceration and structural exclusion. It's born from a mindset that became a system. So keep in mind that mindsets always become systems. The system that is shaped education is shaped policy, it shaped economics and society. And the new school to prison pipeline is reflected in at least 4 different components. Number 1, restricted educational opportunities. What does that mean? That means that your child, my cousin, my son, my nephew, your granddaughter, your grandson are only going to be able to see specified educational opportunities based on the school that they are in and based on the region where that school is located. It also restricted educational opportunities look like this. I want to go to college, right? This is me in a case scenario. Let's say the student name is Manuel. Manuel wants to go to college, but he does not know the criteria, the prerequisites associated with desiring to go to a specific college. Manuel goes through 3 years of high school and he has not done any research. His parents have not been involved. He hasn't got in tune with his counselor. Therefore, he doesn't know what he needs to get to the next phase of his life. That's a restricted educational opportunity. Why? because he may only see education as something that transpires in the institution or in the building itself. After 3:30, 3:15, whatever time his school day ends, his education ends in his mindset. But education is not limited to the four walls of an institution. Education in school was one at one point. It was a systematic move that separated the two because it was a mindset. Remember, mindsets equate to systems. Second component of the new school to prison pipeline is limited post-secondary options because Manuel didn't do what was necessary and he didn't know when he graduated from high school because he graduated physically from the building, but he still had the same mindset. His post-secondary options is limited because the institution is not touching on purpose. It's not touching on destiny. It's not touching on identity. It's not touching on skills, interest, experience. It's touching on academics with a heavy emphasis. It's not touching on career development as I won't even say as it should, because many people believe that the school system itself is supposed to do A, B, and C. But remember, the school system is not broken, it is fixed because it came from entities, it came from mindsets that didn't take into consideration. It took into it. I would say this: anytime a program is created, oh, I'm sorry. Anytime a program is made, because we don't create programs, we make them. We have ingredients, and we put those ingredients into the pot of stew. We put it in the stove, and then something is birthed from that. Anytime a program is made, is made by the mind of the personal people. But the question is, who is it made for? We believe that we believe that systems are made for us. And there that brings a tremendous amount of frustration. But the reality is that when something is made, a system or a program is made, the question you have to ask yourself is, who was it made by and who was it made for? Not imposing your opinion on what you believe or think the answer is, but you have to ask yourself that question and wait for the answer. The new school to prison pipeline also results in diminished lifetime earnings because, and keep in mind, I'm speaking from my professional and personal lived out experience of prosperity and abundance in the realm of education and business. The new school to prison pipeline results in diminished lifetime earnings because most individuals have a 9 to 5 mindset. And a 9 to 5 mindset only works from Monday through Friday in the terms of a verb and not a noun. A 9 to 5 mindset works for a weekend. And then when Monday begins, we back to work. When you break the bondage in association with the school to prison pipeline, work and opportunity is there's a plethora, there's an abundance of work and opportunity around you, but it's dealing with the perception, which is in direct correlation in relation to mindset. And one of the most important aspects, or one of the most important components that the new school to prison pipeline produces is underrepresentation across leadership in terms of state, local, and federal leadership, community leadership as well, policy, media, and the workforce. This is one reason why you see a underrepresentation of specific ethnicities in these different arenas. When you talk about state, federal, and local government, when you look at policy, when you look at media, when you look at ownership as it relates to business, when you look at the workforce and various occupational settings, the new school to prison pipeline has produced some of these aspects. The old school to prison pipeline primarily dealt with a streamlining a specific group of people into literal prison. The new school to prison pipeline touches on these four components. It can equate into a literal incarceration, but it also results in structural exclusion in terms of restriction. So the key words are restriction or restricted, limitation, diminished, and underrepresentation. It is good. Yeah. Let's see what questions we have. We got up in select. It's 11:32, my people. It's 11:32, my people. We doing a great work. Let's see. Do, do, do. All right. Let's go. Why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026. This is a statement that I heard from a great man of God, and I've given some statements from my great man of God, Apostle Stephen Moffitt. I also want to give you this thing because this was profound to me, and this is connected to the policy aspect that the new school to prison pipeline perpetuates, and that even the old school to prison pipeline perpetuated, back in specifically 1892 and beyond. And I'll touch on, as time goes on, I'll touch on the historical evolution of the school to prison pipeline. And so keep in mind, the school to prison pipeline, the name didn't come into inception until 2003, but it was born way before then, but it just didn't have a name. So the statement is that policies are products of mindsets introduced into law. This is from Apostle Joshua Selman. Policies are products of mindsets translated into law. Once a policy is introduced, that policy came from an idea, and the idea itself was embedded within a mindset. So you have a mindset, you have a perspective, you have a way of seeing yourself, life, environment. Those are ideas ingrained into that mindset. If we want to get something done, we're going to introduce a policy and get it accepted as law. Why? Because people have the tendency to commit more to natural law than they do spiritual law. When people see a law, because it deals with the natural man. This is heavy. It deals with the natural man, and the natural man, human, deals in a limited capacity, limited understanding. So the natural man looks for guidance externally and not internally. People succumb to, commit to, submit to natural law before spiritual law. But our origin is spirit. Make it make sense. And people will refute that because they'll use their intellect and logic to reason away truth. But truth is always going to continue to manifest himself. Policies are products of mindsets introduced into law in terms of the old school to prison pipeline and the new school to prison pipeline. Once those ideas came about, how can we educate a massive group of people in an organized structure in a systematic way? We pass a law where each region, state, city, and county can follow the law. I can go here. The internal transformation process, which I really don't want to touch on, but just because we using the word mindset, thoughts, ideas come from the mind, perception. And it's a lot of different influential factors that make up the mind. But we won't touch on it here because our goal is to really emphasize why the new school to prison pipeline is important. Secondly, beliefs have ideas become convictions, values, key point. Conviction shapes what matters most. Values is what is important to me, not what's important to us. It can be what's important to us, but it can be important to us, and that us could be a selected group of people. So this is important to us as far as putting a system in place to educate a massive amount of people in a systematic way that we see fit. But it all came from a mindset. So the values form a governing mindset, which we can produce, we can manifest into law, and people will abide by it because they respect because America is a quote unquote democracy. So I apologize for interrupting that thought, but the representation is important. So when you have a specific group of people represented by one or two people, their value system is going to coincide in some areas, which gives the group or personal people leverage because we share a value system, which means certain components of life is important to us and essentials of life is important to us. Pass this law because we share a similar value system, and I know that you got my back. We're about to close this out. We're about to close this out. Why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026. We still got to touch on the forest city aspect. We still got to talk about warehousing, black and brown. We've been touching on the black and brown. Air pollution, air quality, Will County and Cook County. I'll touch on this in a second. We're going to touch on this and we're going to finish this, complete this conversation. All right, let's do this. The new school to prison pipeline. Why is this important now, 2026 and beyond? Why does this matter? It matters for our communities. It matters for this generation, the next generation, and the generation to come. Practically speaking, elementary students first. We're going to touch on elementary, middle school, high school. Elementary students. Why does this matter? Because early learning shapes identity, confidence, curiosity, and how children see themselves in the world. If a child is only trained to fit inside of a system, they may never discover their gift, imagination, and purpose already placed inside of them. So when you have a child placed in a system that's structured, that's designed for a specific outcome, that environment, that external environment may not allow that child to discover the internal environment, the gifts, the talents, the ability, the interests, the imagination, the purpose, the creativity, the curiosity within that child. It may not those components, those internal attributes of that child will not reach its full potential because it's in the four walls of an institution. And within the institution, there's a design within that institution. This is why teachers are so important, because teachers that are cultured, when I say cultured, meaning that they're not, they have cultural experiences outside of their students. They bring culture to the student, and it's not for them to impose, but they lay out ideas for the kids to consider. And perfectly, the parents are doing their due diligence, asking the kids, "What did you learn in school today?" And so I want to highlight the word learn, Learn. I want to highlight that word because learning does not truly take place inside the four walls of the school building. Exposure does. When learning occurs, learning is a hands-on exercise. Exposure is a intellectual exercise. Exposure means that I've been in an environment and I've been exposed to something or someone or some form of new information in context of what I'm sharing. Learning means that I've accepted that information based on the new person or environment that I've been exposed to, and the seed has found ground and now it's taking root and it's going through a maturation process by doing, by applying, by exercising the idea or concept and the practical application of that concept to produce an outcome or a desired result in my life and the life of others. True education helps elementary students build confidence, develop their curiosity, and begin to see their voice, value, and potential. Why does the new school to prison pipeline matter? The awareness of it in 2026 for the middle school years help shape self-image, confidence, and direction. Every experience that your child has in the school building allows them to shape self-image, confidence, and direction. The cognitive development may experience a progression as they transition into middle school, but every facet, every phase of their school and career of experience help shape self-image, confidence, and direction. As far as middle school, this stage is where many young people are asking, who am I? They may not be asking that externally, verbally, but they may have that question in their hearts. Where do I belong? And what am I capable of becoming? Now, I'll challenge. You have to reach a certain dimension of thought to ask yourself, what am I becoming? Because what am I becoming is a identity question. Sometimes people get the what before the who. They think about the profession before they think about themselves as a person as it relates to their character development. In middle school, it's much more challenging than in elementary, pre-K, and high school for my professional observation because I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to fit in. And with fitting in, so let me say this. Your child does not fit in by being a copycat. We don't fit in our society, our communities, whether it be the school community, family community, or a community at large. We do not fit in our communities, our various communities that we find ourselves a part of. We do not fit in our communities by being a copycat. We fit in our communities by being unique pieces of a many facet faced puzzle. But kids don't know that. via their experience. It's up to us as parents to continue to have those conversations, to continue to reinforce those conversations, to continue to ask those questions. But because they're limited experience, they don't necessarily know. And this is produces impulsivity in children because I'm not thinking before I do. I may be acting, I may be behaving for acceptance. High school. Why does the new school to prison pipeline, why is it important in 2026 for high school students? Because the high school students are preparing to make life changing decisions about post secondary education, which consists of college, career, relationships, money, purpose, entrepreneurship. There's so many different decisions and ideas and thoughts that high school students have to make. I always tell high school students or high school, well, when I used to do a lot of work in the middle schools, I would tell students, hey, this is how it's gonna go. And some of those middle school students that I do see when I do get opportunity to come to the high school, and like, yeah, I understand what you were saying now. Absolutely. That high school experience goes so fast. And many of you watch this already know. And that's what all I would say. That's all I would say in terms of the high school students. That is so important. It's so important that they have the ability to experience exposure, experimentation, education. There's about four or five, four or five, maybe six components that I teach on that helps the high school students in particular identify their career pathway that complements who they are. That's extremely important because without that, you don't experience fulfillment. Black and brown communities. Why is the new school to prison pipeline important in 2026 for Black and brown communities? And as we wrap up, because we'll finish this conversation at 12 o'clock, because we've been going hard in the paint. This brings me to Forest City. This brings me to this brings me to Forest City. This brings me to warehousing logistics, manufacturing plants. This brings me to Joliet, Illinois. This brings me to Will County. This brings me to traffic noise, air pollution, and air quality. Will County, Cook County. The new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026 because of the effect that Black and brown communities experience due to warehousing factories and high truck or high traffic truck areas. Many of our kids are not only navigating school systems that wasn't built for them and wasn't built by them and wasn't built with the input of them or their parents or their communities, we are also navigating environmental conditions that affect health, focus, attendance, and opportunity. So Ford City Mall this week, via the news, is closing. Some of the ideas that's being produced from the closure is what we gonna put in a place that is monstrous structure. Let's put in some warehouses. Let's put in some factories, which is going to result in jobs, but it's also going to result in environmental conditions depleting. It's also going to result in a elevated level of traffic, which impacts your streets, impacted level of pollution, which affects your air, which affects your health, which affects your focus, which can affect your attendance and opportunity. See, everybody, we were not created to fit inside of a box. Yet, there has been a box made for us to fit inside of. Everybody has not been designed to work in a warehouse, but a warehouse is a mass production project or endeavor. Institutionalized school is a mass production endeavor. This is the question. What educational requirements do you need to work in a warehouse? Second question, is $20 to $30 an hour good money? Third question, is it worth your long-term health, focus, whether it comes to you and your immediate household? These are all questions that you got to think about. See, and here's the deal. We believe that $30 an hour is good money. I disagree because in that system that you've been taught, you associate time for dollars. You exchange time for dollars and not value for dollars. When you expand past the school to prison pipeline systematic structural ideologies, you will discover through your life experience that your dollar amount is associated with the value that you can bring. And that value is associated with your gift, your talent, your skill, your experience, your ability, and your resource network. Why the new why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026 in relation to Black and Brown communities when pollution, poverty, and poor education designs collide. So you got pollution, you got poverty, you got poor educational designs collide. Children are forced to fight battles that they don't create, and some of the battles that they're fighting, they're succumbing to because they don't know it's a true battle because they believe that this is my norm. You don't fight against your norm. You only fight against your norm when you discover there's a new norm. You only fight against your norm when you discover and realize that your norm is abnormal. Families and communities, why did the school to prison pipeline, the new school to prison pipeline in 2026, why is it important and why does this matter in terms of families and communities? Parents and guardians need to understand the difference between sending their child to school and preparing them for life. School and life are two different entities. Can school prepare you for life? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Is school preparing you for life? That's the question you have to ask yourself. When families understand the difference, they can advocate better, expose their children to more opportunities outside the four walls of the institution, and help them develop purpose beyond the classroom. Purpose is developed beyond the classroom of school. Purpose, the reason why I'm here, is developed throughout the classroom of life. Life as a classroom. That's one classroom that we can guarantee where we will learn something in terms of being introduced to new ideas, concepts, understandings, and the application thereof in our lives. In the school of life, in the classroom of life, if you don't get it and understand it, and if you don't apply it, you go back to that same class. In the institutional aspect, unless you're going into a college aspect, and if you fail, there's a possibility that you may be passed along and your grade may be modified. What message does that send to you? that I can do the least and still get by. I remember I ran into this guy. I forgot what he looked like. Didn't even know his name. But this is one aspect that I remember that he said. That brother said, C's get degrees. I said, whoo, that's heavy. Being average, operating in mediocrity and status quo can get you past. Communities. Why the new school prison pipeline is important in 2026 for communities. The future of a community is shaped by how its children are educated, protected, and developed. When our kids are truly educated, communities gain leaders, innovators, builders, problem solvers, and generational wealth. So your generational wealth is being compromised if we only sending the kids to school to get formal education. You have to get informal education. You have to get non-formal education. And this is a statement that I would leave you with as we close out, that if we as a community don't step up in our informal, non-formal, cultural, and community educational spaces, our social, economic, and the ability to relocate to better spaces that are more healthy, from highways, warehouses, factories, industrial areas, waste sites, and high traffic area zones where Black and brown people are most affected will lessen. Our ability to transition and immobilize will lessen if we don't step up to the plate and enhance, increase, refine, and better our informal, non-formal culture and community educational spaces. And when I say that, I mean the workshops that you go to in your communities, the churches that you attend in your communities, anything or any vehicle that has anything to do with a man or a woman or a person giving you some information is considered as education. But if we don't better these spaces, our ability to upgrade, our ability to transition, and specifically in terms of Black and brown communities, will lessen. So the quality of your education matters extremely. Education separated from life is not learning. It's just school. When you separate, when you separate, when you separate life and education, all you have is school. Then the result of that is stuff like what's happening in Chicago, those takeovers, because our kids are bored. We got to get them something that's of interest to them, something that's important to them, something that can assist them in getting into the next phase of life. And as I close in this conversation, see, we think and we believe it should come from, and I want to touch this last piece. We believe and think that it should come from the government. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The assistance can come from the government, but the change has to start with us and our households. We have to look at our family structure and dynamic and identify these dysfunctions and get a blueprint from a family that's functional. That's what we got to do. If we continue to rely on the government to govern our kids, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. It won't work. It won't work because the government can never take the place of a family, and the government can never take place of God. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being there. The new school, more and more strategies, more historical content, more is coming in the future. And the goal is to liberate the people where their opportunities, their resources, their lifetime earnings, the underrepresentation, the limited post-secondary opportunities, the diminished lifetime earnings will cease as we continue to trumpet this message and as you continue to support and listen and share. Things won't get better, but things will change. I'm Mr. Cage, the trainer, potential, teaching kids to think before they do. This was a power hour, conversation. Why the new school to prison pipeline is important in 2026. We'll talk soon. Have a great weekend.